Hello chefs, again another cold winter day. So I'm making a warming soup. It's a lentil soup. I use red lentil because they're quite fast to cook instead of brown ones. And of course some vegetable to with it. A bit of parsley in my butter. Salt, pepper, oil as usual. Stock. Then spices, some cumin. Some garlic powder and some hot paprika. So I go straight into it. So we got time to make as well perhaps some croutons with it. I'll start off by putting the pan on maximum and chop my onions very fine, as we have learned so many times before, doing the finger walk, and make it as fine as possible so the soup can cook as quick as possible, because we always trying to do all our recipe, or at least mine recipe, within 15, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour at the most with some soups. It's all quick and easy to cook. We just pay attention to techniques more than a recipe. The techniques you can go further than just one recipe. So very fine. And it should be smaller in size than a grain of rice. Anything bigger is not finely chopped. So you go a little bit there. Put some oil in my pan while I'm doing this. So multitasking is one of the chef's requirements, especially if he's cooking for a restaurant with about, maybe 16 different dishes going on at the same time. And here he goes. Oops, I have to turn it around. And that is sort of frying just to get a tiny bit of color, slightly caramelizing. Next is something I've done before, which is a very fine dice called brunoise. So take the bottom off like we done previously for the shred, and keep that and put it down flat and cut it as thin as you can into strips. So start off with slices first, keep them sort of piled up nice and neatly, and then the rest of the carrot, which I put down flat, which is much easier to cut. And this one now, as I say, is a classical cut called brunoise. So strips like matchsticks, a bit longer depending on the carrot. And if you're doing carrots, you're better off having a short carrot than a long one. It's much easier on the length of the blade. My onions are caramelizing. So you can see the sequence: carrot, slices, strips, and now a cross. Very fine. And that is now what we call brunoise. So when I ask a cook or a chef to cut me a brunoise, you know exactly what size and shape I'm looking for. Of course you could cheat and you could use a machine, or even if you're very rough, you could use a grater, but that's not to the standards that's sometimes required. It certainly looks better in a soup itself. And just add it slowly so as to slightly sweat. So I got the other ones, I put them down like I done with the other carrots with the salad, and strips. Remember, the last slices keeps the first one down, the one next to it, so that it doesn't slip about. This is a good technique. It gives you quite a lot of knife control, which is what you want even at home, because you can keep sharp knives, and having control over it, they're far safer than blunt ones. You can see it's very fine dice, probably equivalent to the onions that I cut previously. And in it goes. Mix it in, put a bit of cumin in, if you got it crushed, better. Still on a part of the pan where it got the bare oil, just to get the heat and crack open and release its full fragrance. And then we move on to the the lentils and the stock. You got 1 cup of lentils to at least 3 cups of stock. Again, roasted as well. And it's going quiet here. Just soaking a tiny bit of paprika. Again, with the heat that will release more of the flavor. Bit of garlic powder. If you got garlic powder, what I find is very good to use is those garlic oil in capsule like you buy from the health shop. They are quite good, very potent, and they do the work just as well. Leave the salt and pepper later on, I think, just in case the stock is quite salty. And in goes the stock. And it should come to the boil almost straight away. Put the lid on top. And very soon I'll be able to do my croutons. But before that, I do the pepper. Try to find a nice flat surface of the pepper, and you do more or less what we've done with the carrot, but it won't be as precise because the shape of the pepper is a bit more sort of rough. But try to get at least something that looks like a square, or rather a cube. And I just use red and green because we've got a lot of orange, yellow there already with the lentil. It's very similar to a dal soup that you find in the Indian cookery, but theirs is a bit more spicier than mine. And I keep it really almost to the last minute, this one, so it's still got a bit of crunch. Part of the garnish really. And then we'll go in with the parsley butter. Or coriander butter, even better if you're doing the Indian style. So I put it together with that because they go in at the same time. Bit of a mess here. So by now the soup should be simmering just right. And I swap around the pan because I want the frying pan for the croutons. I clean my board. For the croutons I need a serrated edge knife. I keep the ends of the bread so it's not wasted, and cut up little dice. So from the small dice of the brunoise and the peppers, I make a larger dice. You can see more or less the same technique, but in much larger form. So take off the ends, cut off in strips. And that's enough for me. Get the rest maybe for breadcrumbs. And then, guys, if you use stale bread or the ends, it's much easier than trying to use fresh bread. Put some oil into the pan, quite a bit because the bread will absorb some. You can use butter as well, but it doesn't get enough heat. Plus it's not as healthy, as you probably know. And put in my croutons. And you can see they're frying already, just have enough to cover the surface of the pan, the frying pan. and just let the heat do the work. So I'll give myself time to do this, and it's just 5 minutes to get this nice and brown and that cooking, and then it's nearly ready for service. So I stop here so you can do your... Well, it is now about 20 minutes later, 15-20 minutes, and I swap them around for the sake of the camera. But the soup should be thickening up by its own ingredients, and the lentils themselves should be just to the crunch. Tiny bit of a bite to it. Right, the flavor is fantastic. Put the peppers and the parsley in. Stir it in nicely to keep the color, so they can even just scald it. Mix it, and if necessary, dilute it down. It's not too bad. You can have had quite thick this soup, and my croutons are nice and crunchy. You can hear that, just dried up, and just tiny bit of thinning down of the soup. You can do either with stock or water or even milk, and I'm ready for service. So I switch everything off, my plate, and just the last taste of it. Make sure that you got the right sort of pepper and salt combination. It's fine, don't want too salt, but tiny bit of pepper to finish. Or you could use chili if you wanted to. And should have the nice little colors there. It is also known by its biblical name of Esau soup because of the lentils. Remember, he sold his birthright for a plate of this. Can you imagine? So, as you can see, it's fairly thick. The rest of the soup can be kept for further sort of days. Make sure it's clean. Then, if you want to, you can put a scoop of natural yogurt, and of course the croutons with it, and that's enough. So there it is, Esau or red lentil soup, or even dal soup. I hope you're going to try it yourself and tell me if you like it or not. It can be done with all sort of dry split pulses that you like. Bye bye. See you soon. Enjoy your cooking.